All right, so some of you are probably wondering what I'm going to do about that 395. And I'm going to kind of give you a real quick, brief explanation of what's going on. There's actually going to be two parts to this video. I'm going to show you something else that I'm working on. But, so the 395, I mean, ever since I made the initial changes there, I've known from that moment on that there was another top end going to be going on that saw. But for the heck of it or whatever, I decided to go ahead and keep running it, making some tweaks, you know, and seeing if I can clean up some issues while I was at it. Now, I did find a few things, and one of the main things I think I found, or two of them, is that I definitely needed a bigger carburetor. It is kind of funny that the 372X torque, I mean, the 372 is smaller, but the X torque carburetor actually works really well on that saw. And I think the X torque technically in some ways could be considered a bigger carb because of the amount of air that's needed for the strato ports. There's a larger demand for air, so the X torque is basically a bigger carb. And it worked out great for that 395. So the other thing is the ignition timing. I discovered some things there. The ignition timing, the advance on the ignition timing was, I should have left it where it was, because what I discovered is as time went on and compression improved, that the ignition timing was actually going to ended up being too early. Now I'm going to take it back to where it was, but I haven't done it yet. I'm going to go ahead and get into the other top end before I do all that stuff. You know what I mean? So yeah, the ignition timing, I should have left it where it was, and it seems as though as the saw breaks in, the ignition timing, if you really push it too far, too early, it can end up, hurting you in the end as it gets broke in. So ignition timing advances may be one of those things that we start looking at more so in the future, but waiting until after the rings are good and seated and everything. Make it the very last tweak in the build, because it definitely did change as the rings seated. You know what I mean? And if my muffler would have been louder, so if the muffler what I have on it is actually really not that loud. You may not notice it, but it's really not that loud. And if the muffler would be louder, it would be hiding the part that I noticed that, the ignition timing might be off. So having the quieter sounding muffler definitely helped me pick up on that. You know what I mean? What else? The loss. I guess the big loss. Because basically everything I did, you would think in a lot of ways that would cause me to increase performance, and actually it slowed me down. And I'm actually not surprised. This is something I've been kind of waiting for, basically because I want to get into doing some changes on some other builds that I have. And this is kind of like telling me, yes, I need to start doing this. So we're going to be putting some top ends on. So I started off thinking we were going to go with pistons, just doing pistons, doing piston swaps and cleaning up some stuff. But no, it does look like I'm going to end up going into full top end rebuilds. So I do have a piston here that I bought right here for the it's a 346 piston, but it's for the 2149. It's actually going to get a new top end, and a lot of that's just because of what I'm discovering here. In fact, I have another piston here that'll help me explain. Where is it? Right here. Yep, right here. This is a piston from the fastest, highest RPM saw I've ever done. Right here. And I keep it here for a reason, because I can go back and look at it. I could put this back in the saw. So this is a piston for a Partner 5000. All right, and if you look at it, it's a pop-up build, flat, And remember me talking to you about those piston mods? This has it, but it's just tiny little bit just on the corner. And I was able to achieve a plus side of 14,000 RPM cutting with this piston. I ended up later switching up and trying these taper cuts. This is not a good one to look at. It's a taper, but it's a pop-up. We can kind of, look at it. I ended up not using this piston. It's junk. So this was one that I was using to make do sandpaper work in the combustion chamber. I don't know if I actually ever used it, but the taper cuts. So I think I'm going to start moving back towards the flat. And I think the taper on the 395 might be one of the things that might be hurting me because of the way I did it. The way I have that taper cut, it ended up creating a very wide squish band. Wider than what I would normally see if I just did a flat, actually, because of the way it's angled and everything. And I think what we're seeing here is I'm fighting. Let me try to think here. So as the piston comes up, it's trying to move fuel away from the squish band area, or away from the edge of the So as the pistons come up, fuel that's trapped in the squish band area needs to be moved into the center, towards the spark plug and such. And I think by running the squish tighter, it's not capable of moving in fast enough because it's a little too wide for the taper cut. So I think, I know Matt House has explored doing like a stepped chamber cut and stuff like that to help with situations like that. And we're kind of exploring some different options right now and looking at that. But I think that's one of the things that's keeping us from really getting the RPM is the saw does appear to be fighting itself to get the RPM. So that's one of the main reasons we are actually going to get another top end. It's because we're going to do a whole new type of taper, or not taper, but we're going to do a whole different chamber cut setup on the new one. And if you do the research and get on the interweb and all that stuff and start researching this subject about cutting a taper into your combustion chamber and all that stuff. So the taper helps you get your pop-up build, is basically what it is, without having that extreme edge and all that. But I've been cutting it at 5 degrees. They say the optimum is actually 10 degrees. But, we could get into trying that sometime in the future, but I'm probably not going to. I'm going to go back to the flat and go this route, I think. Try to keep my squish band a little thinner. I think our squish band is just too wide for as tight of a squish number as I'm running, and I think it's fighting it and keeping it from really revving out. Now, it does run great. So, like I was saying, if you get on the interweb there and start researching this subject, you'll see a lot of studies have been done saying that tapered cuts can help you on an engine that is really lacking in torque. And it can help bring up the torque, help push that piston up there further, and make your combustion chamber smaller and all that stuff. Push up compression. It's like doing a pop-up, but in a tapered angle. But what they'll tell you online there is that the tapered cuts can actually not run as high of an RPM as a flat one. And it has to do with the fact that it affects the squish velocity, which is basically the speed in which the fuel or charge or whatever can move from the outside edge of like the piston area to the center of the combustion chamber. It makes it travel slower. It's not as, and whenever it's traveling slower, it's not as violent in the combustion chamber. As the fuel gets shoved in there, the effect isn't as violent, because the more violent you can kind of get it to stir up in there, the more efficient of a burn you'll get. And they do say online that the flat cuts do achieve higher RPM better. This is well documented across motorcycles, everything. I mean, this is extremely well documented. The question here is that these techniques that you see online and everything have not been applied to chainsaws. So this is kind of like me being like, okay, so I'm going to play with this stuff and see what I like. Because some folks, like Charlie, he does taper cuts extremely effectively, and he can build some extremely fast saws using taper cuts. But I'm not Charlie. I port differently. So his port work, his compression numbers, all that stuff are different than what I'm doing. So it's going to affect it. And I think for me, with my method of building, I think a flat shape is going to be more effective. And part of the reason I say that is because of this saw right here. You guys are familiar with it. The pull-in, right? This is one of the hottest saws I've ever built right here. She's a flat piston. There's no taper cut to it. It's well documented. It's an 8-horse build, and I compete with it at the races, and it does extremely well. In fact, it would probably do even better at the races if there was a better person operating it. I've been running the same chain on this saw for a while now, and I'm suspicious that it's getting to that point. I mean, it still feels sharp, but I'm suspicious it's getting to that point where I might want to consider changing it out. You know what I mean? But this isn't my only one. I got several saws on the shelf, and some of them perform like noticeably better than others. And all the ones I'm struggling with have the taper cuts. And I think part of that is because I'm not pushing the compression in the same manner as like Charlie Briscoe does or something, you know what I mean? Because he is phenomenal at these taper cuts, and it's just not doing it for me. So I think a lot of it just has to do with the method in which I am building. Now, that 395 did perform better with a larger squish number than it did with a smaller one. And that's one of the reasons I'm thinking that, you know what I mean, my squish velocities might be getting screwed up. I'm just not being able to push, you know what I mean, push the fuel out of the squish band area. I don't know for certain. I mean, this is just a wild guess out of thin air here that I'm thinking of here. You know what I mean? So I don't know any of this for certain, but I am going to put another top end on it, and I'm going to do a flat cut on it, just like the hottest saw I've ever built, and just like the other 2 or 3 really, really hot saws that I have that easily pull better RPM, run better and everything in the cut than what I've been building on these taper cuts. So like the ones that I need to rebuild are this 395. I need to redo it in a different manner. I'm going to put I'm going to put a flat top on it, and we're going to see how it does. If that works out way better than what it was, then we got the 2149. We'll throw another top end on it. Do the same thing. We'll get rid of the taper cut and go to a flat. And then if that works out, then I got that Neotech. You know, it's got a taper cut in it, so we can take that top end off and throw another one on with a flat cut. In fact, I think the Hopper build 372 that I've been racing with, it might even be a flat cut. So, you know what I mean? My Dalmar, though, like my Dalmar, I said I'm probably going to have to go back into it. It's a taper cut. So I'm probably, that's one of the things that's leading me up to this, thinking that I'm going to have to go back into it. You know? So, and a lot of the like 395s that you see that really run really well, they're not doing crazy squish band modifications and all that stuff. They're just basically flat cuts, all that stuff. So it's definitely proven that the flat profile on the piston, here's the old piston that came out. It's kind of messed up looking because I had it in the lathe looking for the angle, but here's the old piston. You know, I'm not crazy about the wash pattern on it, but yeah, I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to throw a top end on this 395, put a flat cut on it, and see how she does. But I'm kind of holding out. So the top end is going to be here in like a day or two, 2 days. Yeah, 2 days. It's going to be here in 2 days, and I'm not going to tear right into it. That's because I'm doing something else. I'm going to try to see if I can get this thing working and make it like this 395 be the first one. I don't know. It's probably not going to happen. We're probably going to be doing it the old school way by hand and all that stuff. But let me spin you around here and show you. So this is actually what I'm working on right now. This is a really old lathe. It's been sitting here how long? But a year or two? And it does not run. And I've actually been, well, TW kind of inspired me to put some work into it. And it's getting closer to being operational. So we got a tool post attached to it, a proper tool post. TW gave me this tool post, and she's good to go. She's done. I need to, get a boring bar, which I want to measure the tool holder for a boring bar. Right here it is. I just want to make sure I get the right size boring bar for this, and I'm almost there for making chamber cuts with this lathe. And that's kind of like what I'm working on right now. I want to start moving into the lathe for my chamber cuts. Because technically, if you do a flat piston and you read online, they tell you to actually set your chamber cut at like 1 degree off from what your pistons is set at. So imagine your piston's perfectly squared off. They do say online to make it just like a 1 degree difference. Now I could do that by hand. So basically I have all these old pistons. I just put it in the lathe, set the piston up to where it's like 1 degree with a 1 degree taper cut on it. And then whenever I do my sandpaper method to finish off the combustion chamber, I use that modified piston for the final tweak on the combustion chamber. And then I use my brand new piston as, you know what I mean? And then there would be a 1 degree difference. So I could do it by hand. But, I got a lathe here, capable of doing this stuff. I just got to finish working on it. I gotta set the motor up yet. So I do have the motor. It's 220. I already got one belt though. I might have to get another belt. It's set up for 2 belts. So I'm probably going to have to pick up another one, unless I have another one here. But right now, this is the belt we're going to use, and I'll have to measure it to see how long it is. I don't see a number here. But yeah, I'm going to have to get another belt. And this should work out just fine if I put the belt there, put the motor down here, I got to make a motor mount for the electric motor and then wire it up. And then we're going to be able to start turning this on and making sure our gears are good. So the issue with this lathe was the gearbox. This lathe is very, very old. So the reason I'm going to this lathe isn't because it's a cold lathe, or isn't because it's like the best lathe there is. This thing is really old, and it has a lot of history to this area. Now it doesn't have a lot of use on it. If you look at the rails and everything, you can't even hardly see any use out of it. I was showing it to Hopper, and it looks like they were trying to. They did some method to try to take the chuck off, put it in reverse, and try to spin the chuck off or something. And when they did that, it looks like they just stripped out gears. So I want to see if if I have enough gears available to spin it at an RPM that'll work for me in what I'm doing. I think they have the high-speed gears chewed up on it. I think it's like 4 revolutions on the chuck to every 1 revolution on the input shaft is like the gearing that's stripped out. So there's gears in here to where I can make it to where it's actually 4 revolutions on the input shaft for every 1 revolution on the chuck. Those gears actually work. So I'm curious to see if it's going to spin the right RPM for doing what I want to do. I'm hoping it'll work out. Those gears are actually intact. And I was actually sitting here playing with it right here. So like for threading, for doing thread work, you got a screw here that kind of like makes it run back and forth. This whole thing turns on and off over here. So you got like a forward and reverse switch here. to activate that stuff. There's another lever in the rear to completely disengage all of these gears, but like right now it's sitting in neutral. Move it up for forward or reverse or whatever it is. I think up is reverse though, and then down at the bottom would be forward. And it's just I got all the gears needed to change this up, and I want to set it up to where like an auto feed won't be doing threads. It'll be, you know, doing just like normal style machine work. I'm hoping I have the right gear here to do that. Everything is nice, and I mean, it's not perfectly tight. You guys know what I'm talking about, but I can grab a hold of this. There's no give to it. My other lathe does. If I grab a hold here and start moving, the whole thing wiggles. If you ever seen my machine work off the other lathe, it's all ugly. There's a lot of slop in it, and I just can't get it to come out. If I do, like there's these little screws you can tighten up. If I tighten up those screws to make that slop go away, as soon as I move it an inch, it's either too tight or too loose. So it's like every half inch I have to readjust the screws to keep it tight. And it's got so much slop in it that it's hard to get a good, nice, precise machine work out of it. And this one's nice and tight. The play here, it looks like it's about 3/1000ths. So I can live with 3/1000ths right here. There's like 3/1000ths of slop from one direction to the other to where it actually starts moving. I'm fine with that. I can live with that. This here, you screw that in for the auto feed. All you gotta do is screw that in, and that activates the auto feed. And I guess there's an auto feed for this guy as well, but it looks like those components might be missing. I believe they were here, and there's a big hole. And it looks like a spot there where there'd be like a lever hooked up to it. I think that stuff might be disengaged or missing or something to run this auto feed, but I don't know. I don't need all that stuff. What I need this thing to do is I need a 4-jaw chuck that turns. I need a tool holder, a boring bar, and I'm cutting squish bands off of this guy. That's really all I'm ever going to use it for. And what's super cool about this lathe is that it came from the local railroad shop. So I live in the area that's heavy on the railroad industry, and the Pennsylvania Railroad Altoona shops, located in Altoona, Pennsylvania, that's where this came from. This was ran by the Pennsylvania Railroad. That's why I have it. That's why I'm using it. The history of it. I don't need it to do anything else than what I'm going to use it for, so I'm not going to be doing any wild, crazy things. I'm not doing crankshafts and cams or none of that stuff. What I need is sitting here, and I'm good. I don't need anything else. You know what I mean? The only thing is, I don't have a 3-jaw chuck, so I will have to do everything out of the 4-jaw chuck. I could get another chuck for it and work at getting this thing spun off, but we'll see. We'll see in the future. You know, we aren't that far yet. It does look like, though, it's on there tight enough that it stripped out the gears, so we're going to have to be careful when we try to get it off if we go that route. You know what I mean? You know what I mean, Vern? So that's actually what I'm working on, the lathe, and getting it up and running. And I want to see if I can get this going before everything shows up for the 395. I need to get a boring bar. So that's why I'm out here measuring to see what for boring bar. And my tooling for the other lathe, it already works for this lathe, so I'm good there. So I think tomorrow I'm going to work at getting a motor mount made up and getting that electric motor mounted. I already have the pulleys. I just need to get her mounted. So that's my plan for tomorrow. That's what I'm planning on doing tomorrow. So yeah, that's what we're working on. Most of you guys have probably already left. I mean, if 200 people watch this video, I'll be surprised if 20 of you are still watching at this moment. Heck, I started turning off the monetization on the middle of videos. So that was probably one of the biggest complaints about watching my videos is how much YouTube was throwing advertising in the middle of a video. And I found that people, once they hit the first ad, they just click and leave the video. You know? And I don't know your name, but thanks for making me aware of that. I disabled all the mid-roll, or the mid of the video, all the advertising in the middle of videos, I disabled it. I thought about, now that's going to really hurt the ad revenue on my channel, but it's not like I make much anyway. You know, $100 bill a month to do everything that I do on YouTube is not worth. It's not worth the effort for me to try to push it any further. YouTube sucks on that stuff, and you know, but I'm still here plugging away doing this stuff. And YouTube for me is just for fun. I'm not trying to make a bunch of money on it. I average about $100 a month, so you know what I mean. You ain't getting rich on that. I intentionally do videos the way that I do. Like I reveal all of my secrets. Like this saw here, all the secrets to make it run really well, they're all on video. Every detail. The thing is, they're not on one video. They're spread out amongst a bunch of videos. And if you didn't watch every video, then you're not going to get all the information. You know what I mean? And some of the videos, like some of the secrets might be on a completely unrelated video. I might be doing a shane sharpening video, and at the end of it, I'll talk about a detail on this build that's vital to knowing how I did it and make it perform. So you literally have to watch every video. But you know what I mean? I do that on purpose. You know, I do. So, you know, I put a lot of effort into figuring things out the way that I did them, and I'm still putting the information out there. But if you don't want to sit down and watch every video and all that stuff, then you don't need to worry about it, because you're not going to know the information. It's not going to be available to you. You got to watch every video. So that's how I work. Whether you like it or not, I could put one video together, show every freaking detail on this. Like I could take this saw apart, show you every number, exactly how it's boarded and everything, so everybody could copy it. You know, but I'm not going to. I got the videos there. If you didn't want to watch them all, then you know what I mean. So anyway, yeah. The only other thing to think of is, well, like you know how I said the $100 a month thing, or whatever, and I disabled all the mid-roll advertising. I thought about trying to push the memberships on the channel. So I do have memberships available on the channel, and since I'm removing half or 3/4 of what causes me to create income on this channel, so let's say I'm bringing in $100 a month, and I just removed all that advertising. How much revenue am I going to bring in? Almost nothing. So I thought about pushing the memberships more to help make up for it. But then I'm like, most people don't care about the memberships. They don't. They just want ad-free videos so they can get all the information. So, hey, if you want to join the membership and help make up a little bit of that loss that I got, then great. But you don't have to, you know. I'd appreciate it, though. It's not much money, but it does help make this a little more worth it, if you know what I mean. Like say I put in a really good, highly detailed video showing something extremely important, just to turn around and make freaking $3 on that video over the course of a year. You know, is it worth it to put in the time and energy, the 2 or 3 hours worth of recording and editing and stuff? It's not. So, yeah, that's why I don't do it much anymore. But anyway, I've been rambling long enough. It's probably been a half hour, and that's all right. The 5 of you are still watching. You get the point. Anyway, hey, see you in the next one. Later.